Okay then, right. Let's get things started. So first of all, everybody, thank you very much for joining us today. This is the webinar which we're going to be covering achieving adoption of your Microsoft 365 intranet. If you're new to Content Formula webinars, welcome. And obviously, if this is not your first webinar, then welcome back. And thanks very much for coming back to us. To give you guys a bit of context for those who haven't been to a Content Formula webinar before, we like to do a webinar once every sort of 3 or 4 months or so on a topic or kind of piece of conversation that we know is popular amongst the audiences that are using Microsoft 365, and they arise from conversations we've had with our clients and things we've heard at conferences and other webinars as well. So we like to do these to kind of hopefully benefit you guys and give some information that might be useful. And today we're obviously specifically speaking about adoption of your Microsoft 365 intranet. And so basically we've had a lot of conversations with current clients and customers about this particular topic, and it's something that we kind of regularly sort of promote, and that is having an adoption campaign or some form of adoption program when you're launching an intranet or kind of any system really inside of Microsoft 365. And it's sometimes something that gets slightly forgotten about or maybe not taken maybe to the degree of detail that it can be. So we thought that this would be quite useful for organizations that are obviously looking at implementing an intranet, or perhaps you've even implemented an intranet and you're at the phase where you're ready to launch, and this might be a useful session for you. So we're going to talk about the importance of an adoption campaign. We're going to talk about the challenges that you're going to face, or challenges that you might face if you kind of don't focus on adoption. We're going to talk about the elements that you need to focus on when it comes to promoting adoption of your intranet. And we've also got a real life kind of case study, and we've got Simon Steers from Entain who's joined us as a guest. And so I guess at that point, this is quite a good sort of opportunity to introduce ourselves. So yeah, my name is Alex. I'm a business development manager here at Content Formula. My roles and responsibilities are meeting new organizations and talking about their kind of requirements and needs for kind of digital workplaces, digital workplace systems, things like intranets, learning management systems, and then recommending the solutions here at Content Formula that we offer up. I'll hand over to John now to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm John Scott. I'm the head of user experience at Content Formula. So I'm involved in a lot of our projects, particularly early on in discovery stages, but also towards the back end of the project when we're launching things. I am also involved in the support provided to content owners and promotion and awareness materials for the for employees. And I worked closely with Si, who's obviously joined us from Entain, on their recent intranet launch, or digital workplace really, because it's more than just an intranet. So yeah, I'll be talking to Si about that as part of the case study piece today. Over to you, Manpreet.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Manpreet. I am an account and project manager at Content Formula, and I specifically specialise in Office 365 projects and the delivery of those. So it's great that we're on the webinar today, so I can go into a bit more detail on the ACM projects I've worked on and the different sort of elements involved with those as well. Over to Si.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me here. So my name is Si Steers. I work for Entain Group. We've recently launched last year we launched a new digital workplace called Entain.me, and I'm hopefully here to share some of our experiences, good and bad, around our adoption journey. So with that in mind, back over to you, Alex.
Thanks very much, Si. I really appreciate that. And yeah, so I guess just to get things kicked off, I'm just going to quickly introduce Content Formula and who we are. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and just go through a couple of slides, and this will give some context as to hopefully why we feel like we're in a position to be to kind of giving advice within this particular area. So Content Formula, who are we? We are a digital workplace consultancy. we specialize in building digital workplace solutions within Microsoft 365, and we utilize the ecosystem that Microsoft offer up. So that's things like SharePoint Online, the Power Platform. For those of you who don't know that, what entails in the Power Platform, it's Power BI, Power Automate, which helps with setting up flows, tools such as virtual agents, which is things like bots. So using those tools, we essentially build digital workplace solutions. And as I kind of touched on before, that's things like intranets, learning management systems, policy management systems, business process automation. And we're very kind of business focused when it comes to recommending the tools that we use. So we're very research led in the way that we kind of our methodology that we use. And so we like to understand the organization that we're working with and then deliver the solution kind of based off that research. And you can see on the right hand side, I've just covered sort of some of those tools that we work with, but we're also a Microsoft Gold partner as well. We very much like to sort of recommend SharePoint native out of the box kind of solutions. However, we do know sometimes that SharePoint or Microsoft solutions, I should say, sometimes don't fully cater to all requirements that organizations have. So in those cases, we often will recommend an off-the-shelf product from a partner that we work with, and there's strategic partnerships that we have in place that we've kind of thoroughly looked into that offer up a nice integrated experience into the Microsoft ecosystem. And there's a couple of examples on the screen there. So LiveTiles is an out-of-the-box or off-the-shelf intranet, which offers a variety of different solutions. One of their specific kind of solutions that's very good is an employee app, which is very useful for targeting frontline workers, for example. LMS 365 is a learning management system which really integrates nicely into SharePoint and Teams. And Zoralia is our own policy management system that we've built, which integrates into SharePoint. And that allows you to do things like target and distribute policies, but it also allows you to see attestations, so those who have read and acknowledged policies that you've distributed, and also provide a really nice interface for looking for policies and documents. And we work with a number of different clients, and those range from big and small, and kind of we'll kind of hear about Entain specifically from Simon's perspective later on. But like I said before, we really focus on the organization themselves and understand best what their requirements are, and then deliver those solutions based off that research. So yeah, so there's a quick kind of introduction as to who we are here at Content Formula. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to start off by distributing a poll, because we're quite interested to understand the reason why you've attended the webinar today. So if you just give me 1 second, I'm going to launch this poll, which should appear any second now. And the question is, what has driven you to join our ACM webinar today? And essentially, it's simplified into two options. Number one, we have recently launched an intranet or system, so you've gone through the project process, or maybe you are about to launch a new system. So yeah, if you guys want to kind of submit your results and let us know kind of the reasoning why you're here today, it'd be really good to kind of find out. And the other thing that I was going to mention is we're going to be having there's an open chat essentially within the webinar today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post the questions that you have, or even scenarios you'd like us to potentially answer and touch upon as part of the webinar. We like to keep it quite conversational with your kind of use cases and your own personal experiences as well. And interestingly, it looks as if 60% of you are here because you are about to launch an intranet, and some of you, 40%, have recently launched an intranet. So that's really useful to know. So so yeah, thanks very much for feeding that back in. I'm now going to hand over to Manpreet to kind of kick off with the next section.
Thanks, Alex. Share my screen. Okay, so what exactly is adoption and change management? So I'm sure at some point we have all heard of the term adoption and change management, or we have some inkling of what it's about and what it involves. But when it comes to adoption and change management, it's pretty simple, as it's all about the people side of change. So when we think of ACM, we think of people's needs and wants when it comes to introducing a new change into an organization and putting the people at the forefront, essentially, of the new change that's being embedded. So when a larger digital project is introduced, normally the focus is put on the successful deployment of it, and not a lot of focus is put on the people. So adoption and change management is essentially the framework that drives successful transformation from the perspective of its people, and ultimately bridges the gap between people and the change. So in order to understand adoption and change management slightly better, I have the ADKAR model up on the screen here. So the ADKAR model is a framework normally used within the change management world, just to break down each phase of a change a bit better and to understand it in a bit more detail. And this ADKAR model is normally used when planning for an ACM rollout scheme or a program, as it allows you just to break down each phase in a bit more detail. So the A stands for awareness. So when this is when the change is first introduced. So this is when a need for the change is identified, and there's a reason for why the change is needed due to industry pressures or company pressures within. This is when the change is first identified and it's spoken about, and the planning starts to happen around this phase. Why do we need this change? What's in it for us? All those factors are planned in. Following on from awareness, we have desire. So this is when people are starting to get excited to be on board following on from this change, and what it will be, what's sort of in it for them, and how it will address their pain points, and if it will make any change in their day-to-day life for when this change is actually embedded. Following on from desire, we have the knowledge phase. So this is when the change has been embedded, such as a new tool, and people are starting to get trained on the tool, attending training sessions and feeling more confident, demos and playback sessions, and having someone such as a champion recruited within an organization to go over in a bit more detail for any questions anybody may have.
Manpreet, so when you say champion, what exactly do you mean by that?
So with a change champion, they are normally people recruited within an organization, and they are the go-to person for any sort of questions or any queries on the new tool or software that's been embedded within the organization. So they can be from there could be more than one change champion, a few within different sort of fields of a company, different regions, and they would be the matter expert on the software.
Thanks.
Following on from knowledge, we have ability. So this is when the change, the tool, the software is being used on a more regular basis. Everybody is starting to implement it, and it's part of their day-to-day process. And we have reinforcement as well. So this is also an important factor when it comes to thinking about how we can keep the sustainable approach of this adoption in place in the long run, such as introducing a treasure hunt on your intranet or a photo competition, which we've done with a few of our clients, which have proven to be quite successful. So each phase here is crucial when sort of factoring in and planning a ACM rollout, so you're able to manage the actual overall rollout effectively. So let's go into a bit more detail on why ACM is so important for the 365 digital workplace. So there are a few benefits of effective adoption and change management, and the first one being supporting your return over investment. As we know, Microsoft and included on your Microsoft license, there's many different tools and features. So getting the most out of those is great when it comes to getting a return on what you've purchased and fully utilizing those tools. Productivity and efficiency is also really important. So good levels of adoption help ultimately improve the productivity and efficiency within your organization, as people are fully clued up on how to use certain tools and different features and embed it within their day-to-day lives, ultimately helping them save on time and resources. Communication and collaboration. Key tools that we use on a day-to-day basis may be tools such as Teams, Yammer, SharePoint, and they're all really good and they help us fully utilize the way we communicate and collaborate. So good levels of adoption can help utilize the way we use these tools in a more effective way. Another benefit of effective adoption change management is the remote and hybrid working in this day and age. A lot of us are now working in a hybrid way. So being able to utilize certain areas of software or technology is really helpful when we're away from the standard office and in a different environment. And lastly, we have advancing the digital workplace. So overall, having the tools and the resources to help train up your employees on the new change and the new technology can ultimately give your employees more confidence in using the software. And this can overall contribute to the overall workplace as a whole and help with scale. And as productivity and efficiency are all factors that are improving from good adoption rates. So alongside adoption, as you can imagine, there are many different challenges associated with change management. So what sort of challenges are associated? So one of the most common challenges is change fatigue. So change fatigue can normally occur when there are many different changes going on within an organization and a lot is going on and employees feel bombarded with everything and all the initiatives and incentives and everything that's going on. So with an effective ACM campaign and rollout, you can make the change feel like less of a change and another item to tick off the list to create a more engaging campaign which is effective and fun and exciting to really gauge your employees and make them want to actually, use the new software and they see it more as a benefit rather than another change. Change resistance is also a common challenge. So change resistance is the mentality of if it's not broken, why fix it? So if people are used to doing, your employees or anybody within the company are used to doing things a certain way, why introduce something new? It may make my day harder or longer, and people may not see the benefit in that. Employees get the how, but not the why. So this is also another common challenge. You may train up everybody on a new tool and they may understand how to use it, but they don't fully realize the benefits of using it and how it will directly address their pain points. So normally what we tend to do is, in order to get a better understanding of your sort of different employees, we do personas at the discovery phase. And personas are really useful because we can carry out stakeholder research at the start before we, carry out the ACM campaign, and we can really direct and address those pain points those certain personas created.
Just a question on personas. I don't know if this is best for John Manpreet. How do we come to what those personas are, and I guess what exactly are they as well?
So there are different personas, and normally the research is gathered from the discovery phase, from the interviews to the stakeholder sessions. And we pick up on characteristics of everything that we've sort of gathered from the findings, and we conclude them to certain individuals, creating personalities in the form of people. John, did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. As Manpreet said, at the design and discovery stage of a project, we will create these kind of like people. They're fictional people who are representative of different types of employee in the organization, who have different role types and different access to information and systems and things like that, and also different levels of familiarity with technology. And we just use those throughout then the whole process of designing and building the intranet solution as a reference point for, okay, what we're creating here, does this work for them? And that includes also adoption strategies and promotional materials and things. Does this talk to those people, or is it something that wouldn't make sense to that person and we need to adapt it? That's what the personas are for. Yeah.
Exactly. So another challenge is usage is not advanced. So we can be using certain tools such as Teams. Many of us use Teams on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes we're not fully utilizing the tool. There are many different features on Teams, and sometimes we're not using all of them because we simply don't know what the features are or how to use them. So having, effective resources really help, and they allow you to use these new features and actually identify them and get sort of used to them through knowledge of them. And we tend to, for example, a popular sort of way to raise awareness around features on Teams is creating top 10 tips, which can be launched within the campaign of your ACM program. And they really bring awareness to different types of features. And this can be in the form of digital signage or in the form of GIFs. So another challenge is keeping up with the Office 365 tools. As we know, Microsoft is an extensive suite, and there's many different new areas of technology that are being released, such as Microsoft Viva. So simply keeping up with them all may seem quite challenging to certain individuals. And the last point is ACM is not always budgeted for. So when factoring in budget, for larger digital projects, we normally, as mentioned before, put the focus on the deployment of the technology, and not enough focus is being put on the actual adoption and how people will get used to the new change and how they will use it and how it can be measured. So ACM is not always budgeted for. And sometimes you may think, oh, we can, budget for ACM after the deployment, but in order to get the most out of an effective ACM campaign, it's always good to do it alongside the deployment. So you can launch certain comms, such as T- comms, which are certain communications that you send out before the launch, getting people excited and engaged. Again, referring back to the AdCom model, bringing that awareness and that desire to the organization.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And another thing to add to that is kind of, if it isn't factored in at the original kind of project cost, is if it's then considered at the end, that can slow momentum down and slow launch down and things like that. So I think when you've got a project team working on a launch, you want to keep that momentum going and keep to those kind of launch dates as well and go live dates. So yeah, kind of removing that from any risk of that being moved back from the process is definitely worth considering. I've got another poll which it kind of, I guess, with those challenges in mind, it'd be useful to hear from you guys. And then we've obviously established that we've got a bit of a kind of an audience that are in two halves here, those who have launched and those who are about to launch. So this question is kind of posed in two kind of ways. So with those challenges in mind, what have you found, or maybe what do you anticipate to be the biggest challenge? I've said the biggest challenge. This is actually, you can select a few, but I appreciate that all of these might be considered as challenges for organizations, but it'd be useful to hear what maybe the biggest challenges are going to be. So yeah, it'd be great to kind of see if you guys can let us know. At the moment, it's ACM isn't always budgeted for. And let's see. So
what's usage is not advanced? Sorry, is that a typo? Usage is not advanced.
Manpreet, that's on the slides, isn't it? Did you want to run through that again?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to usage,
sorry, there's just a D missing. Sorry, I got it. Yeah. Sorry, this is the connection.
That's a typo from the person who manages the polls, which is me. So apologies about that. So yeah, so all in all, okay. So change resistance 19%. Employees get the how but not the why. It's just dropped down to 18%. Usage is not advanced. Keeping up with the Office 365 tools and ACM isn't always budgeted for is 25%. So it's quite spread across all of those kind of different challenges. So that's great. And if you guys want to, in the audience, anyone wants to mention any specific concerns or maybe previous experiences that you had, if you want to mention those in the chat and and let us know about those experiences. We are going to have a Q&A section at the end, so we might have time to go through that. If not, if we've got space inside the actual webinar as we're going through slides, we can talk about that. So yeah, if you've got any questions or anything you want to relay to us, it'd be great to hear about it. So yeah, sorry, back to you, Manpreet.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand over to John and Sai. Sai is a lovely client of ours who works for Entain, and we recently helped them with their intranet implementation, and we've done a few areas of adoption and change management as well. So I'll hand over to John to go into a bit more detail on that.
Yeah, thanks, Manpreet. So as I mentioned at the start on the intros, I worked quite closely on this project with Sai. For Entain, a big sort of like re-platform and rollout of a new intranet, and really, well, we call it a digital workplace because it's kind of, you know, wider than just a traditional intranet. And I think it was, you know, very interesting project, a lot of engagement from all areas of the business. And I think also what was very interesting about it, and why, you know, we've invited Sai to this call, is that I felt that not only did we have components of ACM that we helped Entain deliver, but also Entain themselves, Sai and other team members did a lot of work on adoption, change management, positioning, value proposition stuff that I think was really kind of like, you know, setting the bar quite high when it comes to companies doing this sort of stuff. You know, often companies that we work with haven't really thought about having any kind of plan for this particularly, or certainly there's not a huge amount of budget against it, which is something that came up in a poll just now. That was the highest response, that it's not really often budgeted for. So yeah, so I think that I'm basically just going to talk to Sai about the scenario at Entain, and hopefully there'll be some interesting bits of information there about how they handle things. So yeah, Sai, first of all, maybe you can just give us a bit of background on the situation as it was at Entain, where before you spoke to us, perhaps, and what was going on there.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I've been at Entain for 2.5 years now. So I should have mentioned up front, actually, my role at Entain is so I'm head of internal comms channels. So all of the digital products that live under our internal comms umbrella. So obviously, intranet / digital workplace, Entain.me is one of those. So when I came into Entain, it was a business that was called GVC at the time. And it was effectively a really fast-growing business where lots of acquisitions had come together very quickly, and there was a really disparate experience across kind of like digital employee channels and basically the entire employee digital experience. So I inherited 2 intranets at the time. One for legacy GVC, one for Ladbrokes and Corals, which were a huge brand that we acquired the year before I joined, and effectively there was a program of work to transition to one intranet at the time, which was based around Jive. Now, when I came in, I'd worked at Legal & General previously, so I'd worked with Microsoft technologies. I was really keen to move Entain onto the Microsoft architecture, because I think that's a really sensible architecture for businesses to work with in terms of digital workplace, given the integrations and the different tools that live within it. So yeah, we set about a project working with Content Formula to transition to a new Microsoft digital workplace. Yeah, it's been it was a 12-month project. It was a hugely quick amount of there's a lot to do in that time, but yeah, I think it was I think the end product we've got now, I think we're really pleased with. So that's a bit of background about where we've come from.
Yeah, great, thanks, Si. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're 25,000 employees at Entain. Is that about right?
Yes, sorry, I should have said that up front. Yeah, so we're 25,000 employees. We've got we're a global organisation across multiple territories. We've got a huge frontline worker population of around kind of 14,000 retail colleagues. So we're a really interesting business and quite disparate in our employee population. So, you know, the solution that we had to deliver had to work for everyone.
Yeah. And in terms of like driving the adoption and doing some of the, you know, the activities that Preet has mentioned, but you're obviously going to mention some more, I think. Who was driving this? Is this just down to you, or is there a team there in Tain who are running this?
So, yeah, having worked on these type of projects before, kind of like, yeah, I was very acutely aware of the fact that adoption and change management's a critical part of, you know, the success of these types of projects. So so it was built and baked into everything we wanted to do right from the outset. And yeah, I think the way in which I tend to look at it is with adoption specifically is around kind of short, medium, and long term. I think there are, the short term around the launch of the product is when you can really generate the proposition, the excitement, get people, really invested in the product. So it's that kind of like something new and shiny. Medium term, you need to make it sticky. You need to have people driving that adoption on the ground. And then longer term, I think you just need to make sure you don't sit still and that the product becomes stale. Because I think sometimes when that happens, people tend to move away from it. So I like to kind of like look at it in those three buckets, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that last one is definitely a big factor in, I mean, often when we are engaged by a customer, they're at the tail end of that 5-year-ish cycle where they've got an intranet platform that everyone's gradually drifted away from because it's not being touched for at least a few years. It's become obsolete, irrelevant. It's been replaced unofficially by other sources of information typically. So yeah, that's a key one to keep moving and never stay still. So yeah, tell us about the activities that what did you do before, during, after launch? I know that we were involved in some of that stuff, but there's some stuff as well that you did without our involvement. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so luckily being working in internal comms, we've got access to a lot of creative resource. So we put together a kind of like a really what I think was a really strong campaign up front. So the entire proposition of Intain.me and the way in which we built it was around it being a unique experience for the end user, basically tailored to content and experiences that were unique to them. So hence the name Intain.me. It's a nod to the proposition that your experience is going to be unique to you as a person. And that was how we built all of our kind of comms and adoption materials up front. We created a campaign called #PlayYourWay. The campaign was effectively a really strong comms campaign, and the Play Your Way hashtag was once again a nod to the fact that you could create your own experience on Intain.me. You could make it work for you based around your role, what you did and what you were interested in. I've probably got some cool little things that I can share with you guys actually. So just bear me 2 seconds and I will share my screen. Can you see the Intain.me page?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so this is basically a lot of the resources we built when we launched Intain.me. So one of the things we created up front was what we called the Intain.me playbook. I won't go through this in too much depth, but you'll see here, lovely integrated onto a SharePoint page. This was a kind of like a playbook we shared, which was basically built around the different features that people could see. We created a quick-fire video series of how to get the most out of the tool. One of the really cool things that we did actually, I think, was create a really good launch video. So basically, we wanted to, I mean, we wanted to kind of like look at brands like Apple, for example, about how they launch new technology and products. So we made it much more of a lifestyle-led video rather than about the technology. So let me just share this with you guys now, because I think it's quite a good way to launch a new product. So just give me a sec.
Imagine our workday transformed. A day where you can play your way and work smarter, faster, and better than ever before. Imagine working without limits, accessing your favorite apps on the move, anytime, anywhere. Imagine a place where everything you see is relevant, with up-to-date news and content personalized just for you. Imagine a place where you're supported in the right way, with everything you need for work just one click away. Imagine a place where our global community is united, connecting with anyone instantly and effortlessly. Imagine a day where you're in control, where you can connect to your digital workplace wherever you are, whenever you choose. Your imagination is already a reality. Entame.me.
Thanks, Si.
Yeah, so hopefully that's just a good showcase, I think. And what we were really keen to do is obviously build a showcase as to what our employees are actually going to get out of Entame.me. That video landed really, really well, and I think it really helped us kind of selling the proposition up front. And then, yeah, just some of the other kind of, like I said, touched on some of the other resources we built were these quick fire video series where we basically walked people around the different features and various kind of various different things that they could get out of Entame.me. So we also created like a Yammer community where people could ask questions and various things like that. So we had all of this kind of like launch comms and activity under this Play Your Way campaign, and that was a really strong thing for us. Just last thing, what we did on launch day is we did this. We did a kind of like a global masterclass on Yammer Live that anybody could join. So I think we had about 4,000 people join in the end in total. But effectively, it was just an intro into Entame.me. We used the video. We walked through the platform, and that was another really powerful tactic for us in terms of getting people to adopt it early on.
Yep, cool. That's great. Thanks, Si. And then so that's obviously all focused on general employee base, and then separately we were doing in the run up to launch, weren't we? We had something called the Entame.me Guru site, which had all the information and training kind of guides and videos for content publishers, owners, of which there were many, right, across this quite big business. So we also we're focusing on adoption in the kind of the content owner and publishers community, because unless they're going to adopt the platform, it's going to be difficult for everyone else to, because the content is obviously going to be the lifeblood. Accurate, up-to-date, relevant content is going to be the lifeblood of any intranet typically. So yeah, making sure they adopted the platform and felt supported was important. We ran what was it, every couple of weeks, or was it every week? Every week, I can't remember.
Weekly content clinics, yeah, that's
weekly,
right.
Yeah, content clinics where we'd have a particular topic for that week, and it would be like, you know, notice board posts, or it would be like posting FAQ information or policies. Each week would be a different topic, and people could join and they'd see a session explaining that concept and how to do it. But also then they could ask any question that they had that kind of had come up during the week when they were trying to migrate their content. And that's also when we would communicate to them around reminders on the milestones for getting content ready across from the other platforms, and so on and so forth. So I think that also was really, really useful, and it helped people feel comfortable using the tools and know, feel comfortable knowing what they were for as well, which is key. So what's feedback been like, Si? Do you have any kind of anecdotal stuff or any data on the uptake and adoption?
So yeah, we've had, the feedback has been in general has been fantastic. I mean, what we found is that obviously with such a big retail population, they were far more interested in the social side of a digital workplace / intranet. So Yammer seems to be the place where retail colleagues tend to congregate more. But as we found during discovery, the actual business itself needed a hub, like a news hub or an actual central entry point into a digital workplace. So Intain.me is absolutely filling that gap. So we're finding that, you know, people, non-retail people are really embracing probably Intain.me. Retail guys probably prefer Yammer at the moment, given that gives them that more social experience. You know, but obviously our longer term aim is to make sure that the proposition you know, works for everyone right across Intain. So we've got a network of what we call Intainers, which is a global ambassador program. One of the squads that we have in that global ambassador program is called Techies, and effectively they're our change agents on the ground who are helping us to drive adoption of Intain.me and Yammer. So they're the ones going into team meetings, sharing kind of new updates, you know, really kind of like helping colleagues to understand and embrace the new technology and how they can get the most out of it. Because 9 times out of 10, people just don't have the time to go and look around new tech and understand how it can really help them. So yeah, this group of people are hugely important in doing that.
And how many of those people are there, those Intainers?
So I think we've got, in our techie squad, which are the people specifically helping us with the adoption of new digital tools, we've got about 40, I think, at the moment. So, you know, right, it's a real spread across the globe, across different business units. So, you know, we're looking to grow that as much as we can, because, yeah, we see them as being hugely important in not just Intain.me, but also kind of like our wider employee digital journeys.
Yeah. And you mentioned Yammer there, and particularly that, you know, the retail sort of division, they sort of live there more than the other areas of the intranet. But it was an interesting approach actually to introducing Yammer, wasn't it? Because that was launched before the main intranet, after doing a series of pilots. So there was like a very slow, deliberate introduction of Yammer, with a lot of kind of like, feedback loops, right? To adjust, okay, how are we sort of like positioning this? What kind of content are we going to put on it, and that sort of thing? How are we going to use it to elicit feedback? Lots of stuff was kind of tested in a period of about over 3 months or something like that, I think.
That's right. Yeah, we literally launched Yammer the month before Intain.me, and the reason being is that we didn't want too much change all at once. I think that's hugely important. I think, you know, when you're releasing new tech, you can overwhelm people really easily, especially when there's there's so many more features than people are used to. So it has to be staggered. Otherwise, you'll just lose a huge amount of people on day one. So Yammer was launched the month before, really deliberately, and it also meant that people were using it, and we had some content on Yammer, because a key part of the Intain.me proposition was its integration with Yammer, and we didn't want to launch Intain.me with Yammer as an empty room, if that makes sense. So the fact that people were using Yammer and got used to Yammer the month before we launched the bigger product was really helpful for us. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So what's still being done today, if anything, to continue driving adoption? I mean, I think you mentioned yourself, don't never stay still. Is that just in regards to technology updates and new features, or is that also including activities around adoption? What happens today?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the techie squad are really important to helping us maintain adoption. But I think that, you know, my lens is focused on making sure that, you know, we're always at the front of new tech. So things like Microsoft Viva, for example, it's really important that we start to build that into our proposition, and we're taking employees on that iterative journey, so that, you know, that we're making, you know, we're living up to the promise or the proposition that we've delivered with Intain.me. I think one of the things with Intain.me, you know, is that, and you'll know this working on it, John, is when we launched it in June, given the short timescale we had, it was almost an MVP at that point in time. And the idea is that the vision for it was going to be, it's going to be much more of a integrated digital workplace experience. So that's the proposition that we've built, but now we need to kind of make sure that we continually iterate to deliver on that promise.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well. And because of the fact that sort of Viva, I think either post-launch or during the run-up to launch, Viva was announced, I think, and it became clear in the time not long after launch that that could play a key role in that seamless digital experience, right, with the connectors and the dashboard and that sort of thing. So now, yeah, the adaptation is happening to include that more prominently, and there'll be a whole new set of activity around adoption of that platform, right, and aiding understanding.
Exactly. Yeah, I think adoption has to be a continual journey. I don't think it's something that has a start and end point. So, you need to make sure that you've always got that front of mind. I think so. I've been in so many organisations where people have launched an intranet and ticked the box and thought, okay, that's fine. And then, to your point, John, 3 years later, it's out of date and people have to repeat the cycle again. That's not something we want to do. We want to, make sure it's future proof and that, it's always working as hard as possible for people.
Yeah. And are there any areas of the business, just in terms of like challenges and learnings from the project? Are there any areas of the business that it was hard to engage with for any particular reason, or it still haven't been fully engaged with this Entain.me platform?
So one of our big challenges is, of course, we've got two very distinct populations, which are retail and non-retail, and they're very different audiences. So we had to design an experience that worked for both, and we landed on that with Entain.me and Yammer. I think we want to make sure that they're as tightly connected as possible, those two products, and they don't become like retail over here and non-retail over there. So, we need to continually listen to our people about what they want and make sure that, that the proposition is working for everyone. But, that's probably a challenge for anyone who has frontline workers, but we'll always have that challenge. I think, things like mobile experience and getting content to people in real time when they're working in shops, for example, is always a challenge, it's one that we'll take a little bit longer, I think, in terms of the adoption side of things.
That kind of like frontline versus desk-based kind of like workers is probably the most common split, obviously, in organisations that we come across in terms of big differences in the audience. But there are often others as well, like in education, there's often the academic staff versus all of the support services staff. In medical and scientific institutions, there's often like very technical science R&D people, and then on the other side there's the kind of the business people. So there often are these quite big differences in the audience that need to be that needs different strategies often and different materials to promote and gain adoption from those people. I think that's a question that came up in the chat actually, was should we produce different materials for different audiences, and ideally yes, but obviously there are budget constraints often to consider when trying to do that, or resource constraints if you're doing it fully in-house. But it's ideal to make the adoption messaging as tailored as possible, for sure. So just conscious of time, I think we need to jump back over to you, Manpreet. You're going to go through a couple of extra points.
Yeah. Just reshare. Okay, so we've covered the challenges around adoption. We've also covered the benefits of a successful adoption and the benefits as well. So what we're going to do now is just close off with what certain elements are required for a successful ACM program. So when thinking of adapting to an ACM rollout or implementing a program, you need to make sure that you're putting employees at the center of what is being done. So everything can be targeted around the wants and the needs of your employees. You need to make sure you understand your employees and their pain points. And as mentioned previously, this is normally done through the formation of personas, thoroughly understanding what the pain points are, what frustrations are currently in place, and how we can directly address them through this new change of technology and highlight the benefits and the features of these. Training and support. Change management normally has some form of training, and training is really crucial to make sure that, again, the confidence is given to people within the organization, and they have that confidence to be able to use the new tools on hand and feel supported as well. So with the training and support, that's normally factored in at the discovery stage. So once we figure out what kind of ways of working are in place for an organization at the moment, whether it's, you know, a training session after launch and that hasn't seemed effective, we can go ahead and look into ways of effective training through train the trainer training or drop-in sessions or recruiting champions. So there's many different options that we factor in when thinking of the ACM campaign and the training and support following on from that launch. Measurements and metrics is also an important element when considering adoption and change management, because you need to be able to measure your adoption rates and statistics. And if it's not at a level of good adoption or a level that is required at the time, you can then go ahead and plan what's next and how to get those levels up, essentially. We also have here top-down and bottom-up communication. So this is how the change is being communicated from top-down senior leaders and how they go ahead and speak about the change and get people excited about the change, to bottom-up communications from peers and champions also discussing the change. It all needs to be measured out, and your comms that are being sent out, and the assets and everything associated with your ACM campaign need to make sure that they target everybody within the organization. A formal plan is also needed. So as with any idea or digital project, a plan is put in place just to sort of forecast and foresee every sort of phase involved with your ACM rollout and make sure that it's all accounted for from the start. Targeting efforts is also essential when thinking of adoption and change management. You need to target the efforts to individual employees. Again, linking to personas, thinking about who you're targeting with the communications you're sending out, who you're targeting with the videos and the assets, and ultimately any form of communication on the new change that's been implemented. And lastly, we have engaging communications. So as with any ACM incentive or rollout, they're normally quite engaging and fun, and they stand out. And these are really effective ways to help, you know, employees and users really embed the change and fully utilize the change and the tools available to them if it's engaging. So whatever the outputs may be, they need to be outputted in a way that's utilized and engaging. So I'm now going to hand over to Alex to open the floor up for any questions.
Yeah, so guys, if you've got any questions in the audience, please post them through now, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. We've got 5 minutes left. So we got one from Tara earlier on, which is one of our biggest challenges is that our intranet has not been assigned a defined role in our digital workplace, broader Microsoft Office suite. Any advice you have to be strategic about that integration would be helpful.
Yeah. So, I mean, this can be a little bit tricky in a large organization where often the different components of Microsoft 365 might be owned by totally different groups or departments within the organization, and they don't just fall under, for example, a KM function or just like maybe there's not a specialized digital comms function, for example. So, I mean, in that case, there has to be a collaboration and an agreement on, okay, well, this is the set of like workloads and things that the intranet is going to provide. Here's how it differs from, let's say, Teams. We're going to use Teams for this. We're going to use the intranet for this, and it's clearly there's a clear definition and division between the kind of the workloads that each platform is for. If obviously it's owned, if the kind of these things are owned by one department, then it's easier to do that. Obviously, to define those boundaries and define that in a single place and have a single kind of like master document that is circulated and saying this is the, you know, the kind of the workload and objectives for these different platforms. But in the absence of that, it can be quite tricky to negotiate that with different departments. But that's something that really just needs to be done. Have some sort of statement that says here are the kind of the boundaries between these systems. Although as the technology changes, you know, you've got to be prepared to be flexible with that as well, because it will become a bit blurred. You know, we've seen, you know, just recently that with Teams, more people are using the intranet or accessing the intranet information through Teams because of things like Viva. So you have to adapt to that, I think, and to some extent embrace that chaotic flux with the technology.
Great, thanks. Sorry, John, was there something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, no, I was just going to go to the next question. Really, good adoption levels. Yeah, I'm going to give a very kind of like typical UX answer to that, which is it depends. I mean, basically during the discovery phase of any project, when we're outlining, okay, what are the frustrations and needs of your employees, what do we need to try and address, how, you know, we come up with ideas for solutions on how we're going to address those. We'll also come up with what we think success looks like in terms of adoption, because it isn't always like, as long as once we've got 100% of people using the platform, that's success. You know, obviously that could be success, but often the number is going to be lower, and it's going to depend on a number of things. It's going to depend on, you know, the subset of the your employees that you're aiming to reach fully, an anticipation of like a group who might be naysayers, and whether or not they'll be impossible to engage with this because they're using some other platform and politically it's difficult to influence that part of the business. And then also it's going to be like, well, historically, what's the engagement level been like and the adoption level being like? That's going to play a part as well. The type of business, the sort of like the demographics in terms of the employee base, the kind of people they are because of the kind of work the company does. These all things are going to contribute to coming up with an adoption target, and then basing your sort of, you know, whether or not you think it's success on that, and continuing to measure that. That's what I would say. Really, it does just totally depend on the company. I don't know, Si, whether there's any thoughts you've got on that based on your experience, not just with Entain but other companies as well in the past.
Yeah, I would just say that don't even think about metrics for the first 12 months, because I think that it can skew how you do things. I think you need to let the new tech bed in for 12 months before you even start thinking about what good looks like, and then you'll get a sense as to when people have settled into a rhythm and how they're using it. You can then start to benchmark what good looks like. But yeah, for the first 12 months, I'd say it's not something that should be front of mind. It isn't for me.
That's always good to hear from someone who's had an intranet nominated for an award recently. So
yeah, we forgot to mention that. So Entain.me's been nominated for a couple of awards, hasn't it, Si?
It has indeed, yeah. So yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, it's yeah, we should find out in July about the latest one.
Excellent, cool. Well, yeah, that's all we've got time for. I'm conscious that we're kind of on the brink of 3 o'clock. So before everyone goes, if you've got any questions or anything that you kind of want to discuss in more detail, if you want to have any more conversations with us, please feel free to reach out to myself. There's my role and my contact details and email address there. So please feel free to send in any questions, or if you want to pick up any conversations, we're more than happy to do so. Thanks again to our audience for joining. To the panelists, John, Sai, Manpreet, thanks very much for joining as well. And we'll speak to you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Sai, for being our guest today.
See you later, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Bye.